Most men will never hear this, and even fewer will recognize it in themselves. You are unknowingly one of the most attractive men in the room, and it has almost nothing to do with your face, your style, your pickup lines, your game, or how hard you try. It's something quieter. It's the internal order you carry. It's the absence of urgency. It's the fact that nothing inside you is scrambling to be approved of, validated, or chosen. People feel that before they can explain it. Women, especially. Not because women are mystical mind readers, but because human beings are wired to notice stability. We register it at the nervous system level. We sense it in pacing, tone, posture, eye contact, and the way someone holds silence. Long before we form an opinion, we form a feeling. While other men perform, overexplain, and chase certainty, you stay steady. And that contrast changes the whole frame. Power rarely announces itself. Real power doesn't need to. It walks into the room and doesn't negotiate. If this message hits something in you, support it. Like the video, subscribe if you want more, and leave a comment. That simple action helps this reach men who are tired of noise and are searching for clarity. Because what you're about to understand isn't about attraction as a tactic. It's about composure as gravity. And once you see the psychological principle behind it, you won't be able to unsee it. Stay with me. You move through life without announcing yourself. Not because you're hiding, not because you're trying to look mysterious, not because you're playing a role. You do it because nothing in you is begging to be noticed. Your attention stays anchored inward. Your movements aren't rushed. Your emotional state stays regulated and contained. You don't spike every time something happens. You don't inflate when praised or collapse when challenged. You don't let every moment pull you off center. And that internal stillness creates a subtle pressure most people can't name but instinctively respond to. Here's what most men don't understand. People aren't just listening to your words. They're reading your nervous system. They're picking up your tempo. They're feeling the difference between someone who is centered and someone who is performing centeredness. A man who is centered doesn't constantly monitor himself. He doesn't enter a room and start scanning for reactions like a radar. Do they like me? Did I sound stupid? Am I being respected? Is she impressed? Is he judging me? He's not calibrating his personality in real time to be accepted. And because he isn't slicing himself into pieces to manage perception, his presence stays intact, unfractured, whole, grounding. It feels like he's operating from a center that doesn't need external feedback to stay stable. That is rare, and rarity creates a value long before anyone consciously decides you're valuable. When you speak, there's no desperation in your voice, no urgency to convince, no hidden pressure to win, no need to impress, entertain, defend, or prove. And when you go quiet, you don't rush to fill the space. That is one of the most underrated signals of strength in modern social life. Most people are terrified of silence because silence feels like exposure. Silence feels like evaluation. Silence forces you to sit with yourself. So when you can remain quiet without anxiety, others lean in psychologically. Not because you demand attention, but because calm silence feels expensive. It feels like something only a man with internal security can afford. Women register this first as a sensation, not a conclusion. Before attraction becomes a thought, it's a felt shift. He's not emotionally available for chaos. He's not easily influenced by praise. He doesn't get pulled around by rejection. He doesn't panic in uncertainty. And that combination signals two things at once: safety and authority. Safety because your steadiness tells her nervous system she doesn't have to manage you. Authority, because your steadiness implies you can manage yourself. Now, compare that to the common pattern. Most men reveal themselves too quickly. Their desire spills out. Their insecurities leak through jokes, over-texting, oversharing, over-explaining. Their intentions become a sales pitch. They try to control the story of who they are before anyone has time to feel it. But you don't do that. You stay internally ordered, and you allow time to do the work that explanation usually fails at. That is where perception starts reorganizing itself around you. Because when a man doesn't chase perception, perception starts chasing him. And not because he's manipulative, because he's stable. Your body language stays relaxed when you're being watched. Your posture doesn't change when attention hits you. Your reactions are slow enough to suggest choice rather than reflex. And that measured pace creates an impression most men don't realize they're broadcasting. You live on a longer timeline. A longer timeline means you aren't trying to extract an outcome from this moment. You aren't trying to force certainty, force attraction, force validation, force control. You let things unfold. And the world is starving for men who can do that. Because we live in a culture of frantic signaling. Everyone is pushing. Everyone is explaining. Everyone is optimizing. Everyone is trying to be seen. So when you're not doing that, you become the contrast. And contrast is one of the strongest drivers of attention. Most men think attraction is created by effort. Say the right line, project confidence, be funny, be impressive, be dominant, be smooth. And sometimes those things work. But what they miss is the quiet flip. The moment attraction stops being generated and starts emerging as a byproduct of internal order, a consequence of nothing inside you scrambling to control the room. You usually don't notice when the shift happens. You don't notice the slight change in tone when someone speaks to you. You don't notice the extra second of eye contact. You don't notice how people linger near you, how curiosity appears without invitation, because you aren't collecting evidence of your effect. And that unawareness protects the most important ingredient, naturalness. A man who's trying to be attractive changes when he feels attraction working. He speeds up, he pushes, he performs, he starts managing. And management introduces tension. You don't. So the effect gets stronger. Your silence is often misunderstood. Not empty silence, not awkward silence, not passive silence, grounded silence, the absence of noise. And in that space, people project meaning. They assume depth. They assign competence. They fill in gaps with their own expectations. This is a basic psychological reality. The mind hates ambiguity, so it completes patterns. When you don't over-explain yourself, other people's minds finish the story for you. And if your overall presence feels stable, they tend to fill the blanks in a positive direction. You also don't rush to correct every assumption. You don't panic if someone temporarily misunderstands you. You don't feel the need to control every interpretation. And that willingness to be misunderstood briefly communicates internal authority. Most men never develop the confidence to let perception mature. They force it into shape. They fight for the frame. But frame isn't something you grab with your hands. Frame is something you hold with your nervous system. Under pressure, you remain consistent, not emotionally numb, emotionally intact. Your tone stays steady. Your decisions stay unreactive. Your behavior stays aligned with your inner state rather than the external stress of the moment. And that consistency becomes proof, quiet proof, the kind no performance can replace. You also don't over optimize your image. Your style feels settled instead of desperate, functional rather than curated, not careless, but not thirsty. That communicates authenticity. Your identity wasn't assembled for display. It was built privately first. Your responses arrive at a speed that feels deliberate, not sluggish, not hesitant, chosen. Pauses that feel like consideration, not confusion. Movements that look economical, not restless. And that calm pacing tells the nervous systems around you there is no emergency here. There is no threat to manage. There is no emotional volatility to brace for. That's why people feel better around you, even if they can't explain why. You're comfortable allowing uncertainty. You can let someone wonder what you think, how you feel, where you stand, because you trust time more than you trust explanation. And that trust creates intrigue without manipulation, gravity without effort. Here's the hidden truth that even you may not realize. Attraction isn't your focus. Your worth isn't tethered to being desired. Your behavior doesn't shift when you receive attention. And because nothing in you is trying to extract value from others, your presence stays clean, unneedy, rare, compelling. This is the paradox most men never understand. The moment you stop organizing your life around attraction is the moment attraction starts organizing itself around you. Not as a reward, not as a strategy, as a natural response to inner order made visible. Now let's go deeper, because once this internal order stabilizes, something subtle changes around you. Not a dramatic moment, not a movie scene, a quiet shift in how people orient. It's as if their nervous systems adjust to a different center of gravity, a center that doesn't demand attention, but somehow holds it. Women respond to this without deciding to, not because they're impressed by a performance, because perception recalibrates when effort disappears. Effort can be felt. Trying can be felt. Chasing can be felt, even when it's dressed up as confidence. And the absence of pursuit creates space. Space is more powerful than most men realize. Space activates curiosity more reliably than display ever could. Because curiosity doesn't come from what you show. Curiosity comes from what you don't show, when that withholding has no tension. And because you aren't managing impressions, your restraint doesn't feel strategic. It feels natural. That's why it works. Most men misunderstand this and try to copy it. They try to be mysterious. They try to act unbothered. They go silent as a tactic, hoping it will pull someone closer. But manufactured mystery feels cheap because it contains hunger underneath it. It has an agenda. It's not quiet, it's withholding. What you embody is different. Your quiet isn't an act, it's the byproduct of inner fullness, a state where you don't need to prove anything, a state where you aren't extracting validation from the moment. And that changes how conversations behave around you. Conversations start bending towards you, not because you dominate them, because people instinctively seek alignment with what feels grounded. In social groups, there's always an emotional baseline. When someone walks in chaotic, tense, reactive, attention seeking, they raise the temperature. They make everyone manage them. But when you walk in calm, regulated, steady, you lower the temperature. You become the baseline, and people relax into you. Women feel this contrast sharply. It doesn't always show up as obvious desire at first. Often it shows up as orientation. I can breathe around him. He doesn't get pulled into drama. He doesn't need me to perform for him. He doesn't punish uncertainty. That signal is ancient, stability under uncertainty. And when unpredictability enters the environment, social tension, disagreement, flirting, competition, emotional ambiguity, your behavior doesn't fragment. Your tone stays even. Your posture stays the same. Your reactions stay measured. And that consistency becomes a silent demonstration of strength, stronger than dominance, stronger than loudness, stronger than a sharp opinion. Because anyone can act confident when things are going their way. Strength is revealed when pressure rises and the man stays himself. This is where the perception shift becomes deep, because emotional steadiness under pressure tells a story words can't. It implies, my inner world is governed. I'm not ruled by impulse. I've faced storms and put them in order. Most men try to communicate value by adding more confidence, more talking, more showing, more flexing, more claiming, but what elevates you is subtraction. Less emotional noise, less reactive movement, less compulsive explanation, less need to be understood immediately, less need to win the moment. Women sense this as containment, and containment is not suppression. Suppression is when emotion is trapped and leaks out sideways. Containment is when emotion is held, processed, and expressed intentionally. Containment says, I can feel deeply without losing control. And that signals safety, not comfort, reliability. The sense that you can be present without collapsing, exploding, or consuming the space. You're not overly expressive, but you're not closed. You're available, but not desperate. You let emotions pass through you without turning them into a broadcast. That creates depth, because depth isn't loud. Depth is what you feel when reactions are delayed long enough to be chosen. Another shift happens here that most men don't notice until it's too late. People begin projecting onto you, not because you invite it, because your calm leaves room. Assumptions form, interpretations grow, meaning attaches itself. Some see confidence, some see competence, some see leadership, some see danger, some see peace. Your presence becomes a screen others throw their psychology onto. And because you don't rush to correct them, those assumptions are allowed to mature, often in your favor. This isn't manipulation. This is psychological gravity. The natural consequence of not collapsing ambiguity prematurely. When you don't force meaning, meaning strengthens itself. Many men destroy this without realizing what they're doing. They overclarify, they overshare, they overposition. They feel compelled to explain their intentions, their past, their value, their morals, their depth. But the need to be understood quickly often signals insecurity, whereas the willingness to be temporarily misunderstood signals authority. You allow time to do the work, and time rewards composure, because consistency across moments builds trust faster than any single display. As this continues, attraction stops feeling external. It starts feeling like something that orbits you. Not because you pull, because you don't repel. You don't distort when attention increases. You don't lean forward emotionally. You don't speed up. You don't become hungry. And that preserves the very quality that drew attention in the first place. This is the trap most men fall into. The moment they feel attraction, they start managing it. They start trying to keep it. They start trying to secure the outcome. And that introduces tension. Tension collapses mystery. Mystery collapses attraction. You avoid this not by discipline, but by orientation. Attraction isn't your axis. Your life is built around purpose, rhythm, and inner order. So attention can't destabilize you because it isn't holding you up. Women feel that, not as rejection, as respect. The recognition that your presence isn't contingent on their response, and autonomy reorders desire more powerfully than availability ever could. Now we reach the deepest layer, and this layer has almost nothing to do with women. It's about power, not power as dominance, power as structure, power as a man being internally governed. When your inner world is ordered, the outer world responds without you forcing it, because you are not trying to lead perception. You are allowing perception to organize itself around consistency. Consistency is the one signal the human mind cannot ignore for long, especially when it appears without performance. Women don't experience this as a trick, they experience it as orientation. A man who isn't drifting emotionally, a man who isn't bargaining with the moment, a man who isn't negotiating his value in real time, a man who doesn't collapse when he's not chosen, a man who doesn't inflate when he is. That orientation makes you a fixed point in an unstable landscape. This is why the power becomes invisible. Nothing about it looks like power. There's no chest thumping, no dominance display, no trying to be alpha, no claim, only the calm implication: I'm already anchored, I'm already whole. I don't need your agreement to remain intact. Most men never arrive here because arriving here requires surrendering a specific addiction: the need to be chosen. The need to be chosen drives men to perform, to chase, to explain, to overinvest, to manage, to secure. And the moment that need dissolves, attraction stops being something you pursue and becomes something that reveals itself in response to you. You are not cold. You are contained, and that difference matters. Coldness is avoidance. Containment is capacity. Containment is the ability to hold emotion without leaking it, to feel without broadcasting, to care without clinging, to be present without begging. That balance transforms attention into respect, and respect is the foundation most men skip. They chase desire without understanding a brutal truth. Desire can ignite quickly, but it cannot stabilize without respect. Respect forms when a man demonstrates over time that his behavior doesn't bend under emotional pressure, that he doesn't punish, that he doesn't cling, that he doesn't chase, that he doesn't retaliate, that he doesn't become someone else when the stakes rise. You don't rush intimacy, not emotionally, not psychologically, not relationally. And because of that, when connection forms, it forms on solid ground. Not urgency, not fear of loss, not scarcity, but presence. This is why your silence carries weight, not because it hides intention, because it reflects self-trust, the trust that you don't need to explain yourself into existence, that you can let your behavior speak across time, that your stability will be felt without a speech. And here's the final truth most men resist. Attraction is not the reward for effort. It's the echo of inner order made visible. Once you understand this, you stop asking, how do I become attractive? And you start asking better questions. How do I stay aligned? How do I protect my nervous system? How do I build a life where I'm not dependent on external validation? How do I become consistent in a world that tries to pull me into reaction? Because alignment outlasts attention. And when attention does come, it no longer disturbs you. That is the shift from seeking response to becoming reference, from chasing reaction to setting emotional tone, from needing confirmation to allowing recognition. And when you reach this point, something irreversible happens. You can't unsee how often men sabotage themselves by trying too hard, explaining too much, reacting too quickly, overinvesting too early, chasing certainty out of fear, trying to lock down outcomes because they don't trust themselves to handle uncertainty. You begin to see the pattern everywhere. You see the man who talks too much because he's afraid silence will expose him. You see the man who jokes too hard because he's afraid stillness will reveal his insecurity. You see the man who brags because he doesn't believe his presence is enough. You see the man who chases because he's terrified of not being chosen. And you also see the alternative. You see what happens when a man becomes internally governed, not perfect, not robotic, not emotionless, but structured, regulated, reliable. The kind of man whose life has weight because his inner world has weight. This is not about becoming distant. It's about becoming solid. It's not about playing hard to get. It's about being hard to move. Not stubborn, not rigid, anchored. So if you want the practical takeaway, here it is. And it's simple, but it isn't easy. Protect your inner order like it's your wealth, because it is. Your inner order determines your pacing. Your pacing determines your presence. Your presence determines your frame. And your frame determines how the world responds to you. Inner order comes from basics that men love to ignore because they want shortcuts. Sleep, training, nutrition, purpose, work you respect, friendships that don't drain you, a life that makes you proud privately, not just impressive publicly, boundaries you can keep, promises you don't break to yourself, time alone without distraction so you can hear what's true in you, emotional fitness, the ability to feel without reacting, to respond instead of explode, to hold tension without dumping it on others. This is where quiet attractiveness is born. Not from tricks, from structure, from self-respect, from a man living like he doesn't need permission to exist. And when you live like that, the world does. Something it always does around grounded men. It adjusts. It calms down. It looks. It listens. It wonders. Because human beings are always searching, consciously or unconsciously, for stable reference points. Most men try to become the center by demanding attention. But the men who become the center are the men who don't need it. So stay with this understanding, not as a technique, not as a performance, not as a way to get women, as a way of being. Because once inner order becomes your foundation, the world responds differently, quietly, steadily, without needing to be convinced. And the best part is this: when you stop chasing attraction and start building alignment, you win, even if nobody claps. You become more dangerous in the best sense, more capable, more precise, more calm under pressure, more consistent. You become the kind of man who can walk through noise without becoming noise. And that, whether you realize it or not, is what makes you hard to forget.